on the day we didn't play well.
Yeah, that's a delusional quote in my opinion.
It's so. I don't understand. Is Christian Pulisic not better than the starting 11 that we saw against Costa Rica in the final against Jamaica? Yes or no?
No, he absolutely is. And,
okay, Fabian Johnson, yes or no?
I'm not sure about Fabian Johnson.
Okay, Jeff Cameron.
Yes.
Tim Ream.
Tim Ream had a terrible game against Costa Rica. I don't think so.
Okay. Bobby Wood.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so there are 3 players there that are pretty damn good. I can't believe... And then there's the Costa Rican perspective. Dude, Costa Rica in Mexico did not take the Gold Cup seriously. The USA were the only ones out of the top nations that took this Gold Cup seriously.
Yep, Mexico used it to develop their youth. Costa Rica did take it relatively more seriously. But it wasn't as serious as they could have, and I mean, also Jamaica didn't really take it as seriously as they could have.
Especially in the final. But remember, Blake went down, so the momentum was bad for Jamaica.
I mean, and you also have to realize that there's going to be a 2019 Gold Cup too, and the 2019 Gold Cup, what's going to happen? Well, in the 2019 Gold Cup, basically you're gonna have a winner, and you're gonna have the 2 teams play for a spot in the Confederations Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter. You still have a chance to play. So Mexico's probably gonna, if they play well, they'll probably win that, and you have Mexico USA again, the Rose Bowl. I mean, so teams didn't even take that seriously. And that's why I thought it was a joke, because how can you say winning the Gold Cup was an accomplishment when half teams weren't taking it seriously?
Oh, absolutely. Then you have Christian Pulisic's piece.
Oh, Lord and Savior.
Player Tribune. Now, I don't have the date in front of me, Armand. Could you double-check to see if it was a day after or a day before Bruce Arena's comments?
Let me see.
Can you check that for me, please?
Yeah.
So now, as Armand's doing that, this is very important because Pulisic wrote this beautiful piece about the failure of the World Cup. And what's striking is besides for the young guys, I don't get the feeling that Michael Bradley, Josie Altidore, and the leaders of the team really all that feel that bad for missing out. Like Christian Pulisic, you can tell that absolutely devastated him for the weeks, and it's probably going to devastate him even more so next summer when he's watching all his buddies at Dortmund go play over.
By the way, it was a day before.
So a day before, and Christian Pulisic talked about how he's a dual citizen and was able to go to Europe at 16, and then while if you're not dual, you're 18. That 18's only when you can do that. You see that with Sargent, how he can only leave when he's 18 to go to
McKinney.
Where's Sargent going again?
Werder Bremen.
Werder Bremen. There we go. And quote, this is from Pulisic. Those 16 to 18 years are everything. From the developmental perspective, it's almost like the sweet spot. It's the age where a player's growth and skill sort of intersect in just the right way, and where the right direction, a player can make the biggest leap in development by far. Which I think is absolutely fascinating. And then he goes on the next paragraph to explain how here in America we treat the U17 like a star. There is no pressure on these players. They're not fighting for starting position. But you're in Europe, that the entire team's littered with those types of young players. They're really talented, and you come up, then you have to you're one of talented players. Now you have to distinguish yourself among those talented players. And I think U.S. soccer does not do a good job of pushing the game, of really driving players to become great.
I mean, how many future Freddie Adus have we had? We have so many players that have been tabbed as the future of the United States national team, and what happens? They go to Europe, they don't pan out, and they end up just being almost forgotten about. I mean, we use Breck Shea. Agudelo, to be honest, is I think one of those type of players. So I mean, you can see that when Pulisic talks about 16 to 18 and how it's everything. I mean, just look at. I think he's spot on, to be honest.
No, he's spot on, and I also think it's a dig at the older guys, because think about it: how many of the older guys are playing in Major League Soccer where the competition isn't important? And
almost all of them.
All of them, right? So if you win or lose, it's not that big of a deal. But Pulisic, if he has a bad performance, he could be on the bench the following week, right? Michael Bradley has a bad performance for Toronto FC, he'll be back in the lineup.
No, yeah, and you like he said, that It's a basic economic theory. Competition makes the end product much better. It's a basic economics. So if there's no competition for your position, you might get a little complacent. I mean, that's the frankly matter. And with this national team, these players going overseas now, this wave of players going overseas, and more competition building, you're going to see different performances. I think from these star players, I think you're gonna have like Jonathan Gonzalez challenge Michael Bradley for a spot, or Weston McKennie challenge even a Kellen Acosta for a spot.
I think Kellen Acosta, he needs to either get to Europe or have a phenomenal FC Dallas following season. I think he's gone to Europe. I think he needs to take that risk. It's
all about that competition. You need that competition.
You do.
In order to keep your squad going. In the United States, there was no competition within the players. You saw that Bradley had no competition. Altidore really didn't have that much competition. I mean, I guess one competition you could have was in the back line, but I mean, outside of that, everything was pretty just like standard.
Yeah,
but Pulisic always pushes himself because Dortmund, he could be starting, and next week he could be on the bench because of Maxi Philippe.
Exactly, and it's that person breathing down on their neck, and we've talked about it on the show. All right, listeners, there you have it. Let us know what you think. Tweet us. Subscribe to the show. Up next, we're getting to some MLS playoff. Alrighty, listeners, joining us right now is Matt Pentz, freelance sports writer, covers the Seattle Sounders. You've seen his pieces on ESPN FC. How's it going, Matt? Thanks for joining us.
Going well. Thanks for having me on.
Fantastic. Well, let's get to it. I mean, we've had, a couple weeks off from MLS playoffs. Seattle Sounders, defending champs, will take on Houston in Houston. What's the mindset so far? Are people getting excited up in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely some excitement here. The layoff certainly doesn't help. I mean, between the home games, the Sounders ended up qualifying for the conference finals almost 3 full weeks ago now. So that's a long way to go off, and then they don't play at home until next Thursday. So they're going to go about a month between home playoff games, which doesn't necessarily keep the buzz going. But if they get a strong result on Tuesday night and coming home with sort of a week to ramp up here, I'm sure that the buzz will increase.
Matt, how has that 19-day break going into that game, how has that affected the team? It's obviously given them enough time to, I guess, rest up, but how has that affected the team? I mean, having that long of a layoff between crucial matches is pretty big, pretty important.
Yeah, I think that they're definitely looking at it as a positive. They've had so many injuries. I mean, a lot of teams are banged up this time of year, but they've been especially hard hit with Osvaldo Alonso shaken up, and he should be good to go. Victor Rodriguez, who was limited in the conference semifinals, and the Sounders really missed his creativity. He should be good to go. Jordan Morris might still be another week away, but you might see him in the second leg. So I think more than anything, the Sounders were kind of looking at that break as a valuable opportunity to get right. And also as a team that's made deep playoff runs plenty of times in the past, this is a phenomenon that they're used to dealing with and sort of that they can use to their advantage.
Matt, going into Houston, it's really weird because Houston has never beat Seattle in Seattle, and Seattle has never beat Houston in Houston, so you have this real home field advantage. What's the expectations? And what type of setup are we going to see from the Sounders in Leg 1?
It'll be interesting for sure because I think that they recognize the value in getting an away goal. Because if you look at the way the Vancouver series played out, the Whitecaps really played to zeros at home, and the Sounders were able to ultimately get through. There was always that danger and sort of that nerves in playing at home that if you give up that one goal, you're in some real trouble. So I think the Sounders really want to go down to Houston, and even if they don't necessarily win, being able to get an away goal to bring home, especially against a team that would love to just kind of sit back and counter. I think the first goal in that first game down in Houston could play a pretty large role in how it all plays out here.
Now, I just want to talk about throughout the season, you guys added Seattle's added some fullbacks such as Leerdam and Nuhu, and we all know that Jovan Jones is going to leave at the end of the season to Darmstadt. Has the addition of those two fullbacks just made it a little bit easier for them to let Jovan Jones go?
Well, Nuhu's emergence certainly on the left has definitely provided them with sort of a backup that they'll look sort of favorably towards the future for. Now they don't really have to worry about finding too big of a replacement. I think that Leerdam's been really important for them in providing some width and providing another sort of player who can provide a two-way threat, because the Sounders haven't always been all that sort of capable or dangerous going forward this season. So having guys on both sides that can provide width and attack has really been important for them.
What about Clint Dempsey? Last year, obviously, he was out with the heart condition. Now he's coming back. Do you think there's extra motivation from him, at least, to perform well, and then the disaster with the U.S. men's national team?
I mean, he won't say that outright. He's not the most introspective guy, typically, but I think you can see it through his play, and really in the way that he stepped up in the second leg of the Vancouver series, scoring twice, really putting the team on his back and sort of forcing his way through. I think there were some real questions up here, even sort of voiced by Brian Schmetzer, how he would come back from the U.S. national team in the wake of everything that happened in losing the motivation of the World Cup next year, how he was going to react to that. But he's been really good down the stretch here, and I think he's proven that he really does want to sort of add to his legacy and add another championship here in Seattle, especially having missed out last year.
Oh, absolutely. My question, actually, I should have asked you in the beginning. Is there any disappointment from, I guess, the supporters that it's not Portland, that you guys have to face Houston?
I think it's a little bit split. I think that from a lot of the supporters, they're just fine with Portland being out of it, and especially given all the drama that's gone down there since, and Caleb Porter kind of being a long-term foil down there. I think that they've kind of more glorified in sort of Portland not making it that far. I think that it's the people on the outside and the neutrals, which is what I consider myself. I'm a little bit bummed out, honestly.
Yeah.
It would have been a way more interesting series, a way more interesting narrative, and I think nationally, I think that that's a big drawback, and you're going to see a lot of that excitement fall off. But I think specifically among the most diehard fans, they're kind of fine with just seeing Portland fall on its face and having sort of a clear road to make it back to another MLS Cup title game potentially.
Yeah. Let's go back to that Caleb Porter firing. Or them splitting apart? You mentioned it, but how are the Seattle supporters feeling about that with their rivals' main coach that's given them trouble in the past leaving?
I think that it's a similar dynamic to the question you just asked, and that I think that a lot of people are just kind of gleefully taking in him leaving and sort of the complicated circumstances down there. People are kind of reveling in that, but I think that come next year, I know it obviously depends on who Portland hires to replace him, but I think that whether Seattle fans will admit it or not, they will kind of miss having Caleb Porter down there as sort of that perfect villain and that guy that liked sort of poking fun at the rivalry.
Yeah.
So long, it was about him and Ziggy Schmid kind of sniping back and forth at each other. Their dynamic was so interesting, and I think that the rivalry is going to suffer for not having him around. Again, maybe they could bring in another guy who really revels in that side of the rivalry, but I think that it's going to be missed up here for sure.
Now, on the show, we like to ask about the soccer culture in specific markets. Obviously, you have the huge issue with the hashtag Save the Crew movement. We're based out of Dallas, so we understand that. But up in the Pacific Northwest, we haven't really got to look at the soccer market or the soccer culture. I mean, Seattle, obviously, with the attendance up until when Atlanta United opened the Mercedes-Benz, that you've had all this. Seattle was the attraction for MLS with the attendance. I know a lot of fans were kind of mad that Atlanta has taken over that. But off the field, Seattle Sounders have a huge market. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I actually think it's a positive to have other markets really coming in and testing the Sounders and testing anybody and sort of dragging the game forward, because I think that to some degree the Sounders could get a little bit comfortable